eventing queries. And an eventing query looks like the bottom section. Select star from whatever event type you're after within a certain time frame, where target instance is and then a certain class name. So that's a standard eventing technique. So if I go in and I type select star from, it's 2 underscores, instance modification event, within 5, where target instance is a SMS package, because that's the class I'm going to monitor for now. I can apply, and it just sits there, just like my temporary event consumer would sit there waiting for events. It's doing the same thing. Operation in progress, waiting for events. If I now go in to any of my packages I have lined up, and I just save the comments and I modify it, can go back. We did this, and roughly 5 seconds, I'll have an instance modification event fired up. Can then go in and double click the instance modification event. Enter. And then you'll see that the instance modification event has a previous instance and a target instance embedded object. So I can again go into these subsections, go for the target instance, double click it, say view the embedded objects, look at the description. Here you see it added demo to the comments to the description. That's what we changed. I can go back, close this, close that, and open up the previous instance. View the embedded location there, go into description, and then you see it doesn't have the demo there. So we actually know what has been modified, just directly from web and test, without having to write a whole bunch of fancy code, because rule number 1 to get eventing going is you have to make sure your event query is correct. Then write a whole bunch of code to do also the fancy stuff in the back end. If you screwed up on the event filter, then you're not going to see any events going on whatsoever. So the event-driven group demo explained, already showed you in the console actually. So you subscribe to the events of changed groups. So I might quickly switch back and show you the query I used there. So the query I have in here is this one. Select star from instance modification event within 10. Where target instance is a DS group. And target instance.ds name is like SMS underscore. Because I only want events being fired for groups that start with SMS underscore. If somebody changes domain users, domain computers, I couldn't care less. I don't want an event filtered or fired for that. I just want items that start with SMS underscore. If you want to choose a different nomenclature, obviously you can. You just have to adapt the filter afterwards. So I then reconfigure Active Directory System Group Discovery to discover the correct group, trigger Active Directory System Group Discovery to run ASAP, find the collection, trigger the collection update, and optionally find the computers added to the group and trigger a policy refresh. That's an optional step, because you might not want to do that in every single environment. Okay. You might want to populate your collections as fast as possible and not having to wait for the normal Active Directory discovery to run, for the normal update collection evaluation to run. If you're going to add multiple machines at the same point in time, and not just a couple of dozen, but a couple of hundred, you might stay away from triggering the machine policy refresh. But everything else doesn't have much impact so far. Okay. WMI eventing limitations. And this is a bit of the sad part of WMI eventing. The way WMI eventing works is it's a comparison operation. So what it does with the query you just created, it runs that query first, and then we specify that within and a time frame. It will then rerun that same query, make a comparison. If something has changed between the two, it will fire an event. Downside for that is that if your event queries become big, or the result set of your event becomes big, WMI will stop you from doing this. WMI has quota built in that make sure that you don't overdo the WMI eventing stuff. And for the demo we just did, once you go slightly above 10,000 groups, the event consumer and the script I run will probably say, sorry, no can do. The event query you run is too big. I cannot keep all of that in memory. You're overshooting the quota. I'm not executing your query, so you're not getting evented. Okay. The WMI quota are configurable though. By default, they're pretty limited. By default, a single event query cannot contain a data set larger than 5 megabytes. So 5,000 bytes is 5 megabytes. Right? So that's pretty limited, which means that indeed if we have a substantial amount of groups, we're probably not going to be able to make this solution go. Okay. On the other hand, the polling memory total, so if you have multiple event queries running at the same time, you cannot overshoot 10 megabytes by default. Okay. Both of these are configurable in root, arbitrator configuration, and there you have polling memory per user and polling memory per total. So if I go back to my machine and have my web test still open, I can connect to just the root namespace, enumerate all classes, and there you'll see an arbitrator configuration class, which contains these polling memory per user and polling memory per total objects. So if I request the instances of those, I can go in and start increasing these to a number slightly higher and allow us to go for a bigger quota. The more you add to it, obviously, the more load you add to the memory of your server. So that's the downside of using WMI eventing. Okay. Now, creating a permanent event consumer, we've done the temporary event consumer, we've shown the script. For the permanent event consumer, all we need to do is create a MOV file. You all know MOV files by now, right? If not, go and talk to Sherry. Sherry knows all about MOV. So we're going to create our own MOV file, and we're going to register it in root subscription namespace. Okay. We need to choose an event consumer, an event filter, and we need to bind the consumer to the filter. So that's how we create our permanent event consumer. Let's first look at the event consumer types. Because there are different things you can have done once a WMI event is executed. You can have a script executed each time a certain event fires. And that's what the active script event consumer does. You can embed the script directly into the MOV, and each time an event fires, that specific script will get going. You can have a command line event consumer. So each time this WMI fires that specific event, that specific command line will run. For all of those that